My name's Jason Roeper. I am the founder and fearless leader of Rivertown Brewing. I got started, well, I probably shouldn't tell you this because that's just going to give away my age, but I started homebrewing in the 90s. I grew up around beer. My uncle was a homebrewer. We'd go to family functions. He would bring corny kegs full of beer he had made, and I was just blown away. I had already enjoyed cooking. I enjoyed, getting into artisanal, making pickles or cooking this, and so it was love at first sight, to be honest with you. So I was quickly wrapped up in it, and the rest is kind of history, man. It just snowballed from there. When I got started brewing, remember that there were several reasons. First and foremost, it was the coolest thing ever, right? But second reason was you couldn't get good craft beer. I mean, back in '99 and 2000, I mean, if you went to any store and were looking for craft beer, you were lucky if you found Sierra Nevada, So my uncle would bring back these beers from the West Coast. He'd bring back beers from England, and I was just blown away by them. I was like, man, how am I going to get this? Well, the only way you're going to get it is if you make it. So I started, reading up on them and buying different homebrew kits and books and trying to figure out how to manipulate, IPAs when IPAs weren't big. And I think for me, the one style of beer that I was always enamored with was the Belgian sour style beers, and they were kind of elusive. At the time, I was married to my ex-wife, and she fell in love with a horrible beer, but we remain nameless, but it had a lot of fruit in it, and it's marketed at a high dollar price per bottle. And I went home to try and please her because she wouldn't drink beer. So it was like, all right, well, I'll make this this sour beer, and it was a lambic style. I'm probably dropping too many hints as to who I'm talking about, but had I known back then that all I had to do was take a bunch of lactic acid, dump it in a Coors Light, and add some syrup to it, I probably would not be standing in front of you today having these conversations in front of these barrels and foeders and casks. But instead, the material I was reading was the traditional way to make lambics and the traditional way to spontaneously ferment and the different types of bacterias and wild yeasts that would ferment and create these wonderful libations. And so I started making these beers, all the while convincing her to give up her shoe closet to let them store because they were sitting in there for years. And of course, when they were done and I brought them out, she thought they were terrible, and I was in love. I was absolutely just, wow, this is amazing. That's everything that the books were talking about. And exactly like at that point, some of the different beers that I had then picked up from some traders and friends that were bringing them from overseas. So that was it. I was hooked. And I just kind of set down that path and tried to figure out ways to perfect it. Well, brewing beer in Cincinnati, as far as being special to me, this is where I'm from, and I think Cincinnati is that city, and I've heard this from so many people, that everyone aspires to move to some other crazy city that they think is so much better than Cincinnati. We've all said it. Some of us mean it. Obviously, when I say if I ever made $1 million personally, I'd move to Fiji, or $1 billion, I'd move to Fiji, and that will probably come true if I ever made that kind of money, as much as I love Cincinnati. But outside of that, I know so many people that have moved away and then come back, and they're like, because this is where I want to raise my family, this is where I want to settle down. And same thing for myself. I moved away. I lived in Central Florida for a while, and I found myself back here. And this is the place I want to work. This is the place I want to raise my kids. This is the place I want my kids to go to school. So that's what makes Cincinnati special. There's something about it, and I don't know what to say. I can't answer that question and say that since in Cincinnati we make a better beer, or in Cincinnati we have better marketing, or in Cincinnati we have better this. I think the reality is that we just have better people. It's the community. It's everyone's better belief in it. We have some teams in the city that we all want to love and hate. It's like, but at the end of the day, we all come back and we love them at the beginning of every year because it's just the way it is. That's a great question. As far as Cincinnati brewing and breweries and survival and this, that, and the other, I do believe there's a saturation rate. There's a saturation rate within any industry. It doesn't matter what you're selling. If you're selling books, you're selling beer, you're selling liquor or you're selling, you know, planted goods such as corn and watermelons. I mean, at the end of the day, if everyone's selling watermelons, eventually no one wants watermelons. You know, and I don't think anyone's ever going to stop drinking beer because we all like beer. I mean, that's not going anywhere. But I do feel that at some point the competition is going to get very steep, especially if we're all fighting for that same kind of local footprint. Everyone that's going to survive has got to kind of find their niche, has to kind of find their way, their path. I think you're going to see some big breweries that you didn't think were going to close. I think you're going to see some small breweries that you didn't think were going to close. And I think you're going to see some breweries that you just didn't see coming that are just going to make huge waves and grow nationally. You know, I definitely think there's going to be some breweries out of the city that are going to make national wave. I mean, you know, it's happened in all other cities, and it happened here too. I mean, let's face facts. Hudipole was a large brand that had a lot of traction. You know, it came and went, but you know, you go back to like the class of '88. You got Cleveland, you know, Great Lakes Brewing Company. They're still very much thriving, and they're continuing to grow, and they're a huge regional brewery. You know, so I think we're going to see that. Rivertown. So Rivertown is one of those breweries where, again, we're part lab experiment because we kind of dig into those sours, and we're really proud of our lab. We've put a lot into that, and QC and things of this nature, because I truly believe that in order to sustain yourself, you have to watch quality. But I think Rivertown has found its niche in distribution. I think Rivertown has found its niche in being that beer that everyone comes back to in different areas. So we've kind of diversified ourselves by moving out. And we get that question asked a lot, you know, well, I don't see your beer on tap as much as I see Joe Blow's beer on tap in this area. Although, you know, it's kind of funny because I go back and look at my books and I'm like, well, yeah, we made 5 times the beer, sold 5 times the beer, maybe just not at the local watering hole. So, you know, we kind of diversify ourselves. And what's great about having this new place and seeing new customers come in and the amount of tourism, you know, they'll tell you, oh, I had your beer in Tampa Bay. Oh, I had your beer when I was in Atlanta. Oh, I had your beer when I was at the Boston airport. You know, I mean, there's just all these different walks of life that are now enjoying Rivertown. And I think that's what we really enjoy. Yeah, so obviously with a new place, a new look, a new everything, I mean, naturally you've got to follow that up with your packaging. You know, it was time for us to kind of shed the old. We had done, I don't want to say that we rebranded up until this point. We've actually just, I want to say updated or refreshed, really, at the end of the day. Rivertown had gone through some different transitions. We were kind of tucked away in a little industrial park, really tapped out for space, trying to figure out how we were going to get to the next level and how we were going to grow. And we kind of knew at that point we had to build something new. We had to find a new place, and you know, that all takes a lot of capital. We are self-funded. We do not have any investors in our business, so you know that takes a lot. That's pretty tremendous by comparison to, you know, a lot of startup breweries, a lot of breweries that are even in existence today. You know, have gotten their way through investment income or investment money to kind of help grow fast. So we kind of did it a little bit more organically and kept reinvesting in our business. So back to the question you really asked was, you know, the reinvigoration or the change in the brand. Yes, you're going to see that change across all SKUs. We've now hired in a gentleman that was with a very large organization downtown to do all of our marketing. And he's kind of branched off and he's working kind of solely with us. He's got a couple of very, very large liquor distributors that he's worked with and rebrands and things of this nature. But I feel like, you know, you put on your big boy underwear with the new system and the new building, it's time to put on your big boy pants too. Yeah, that's a real tough one because there's all kinds of different things, you know, that, you know, wow, yeah, man, you're going to do some edits here. Good Lord. Yeah, because I could take that and run with that in so many different ways, and I think I'm just going to kind of strike a path and go down one. So I think key for Cincinnati is going to be, for craft beer drinkers, is always remember that we as brewers we need to be held to certain standards, same as you would hold you know, the butcher down the street to certain standards. If you went in and bought meat and it was rotten, you would go back in and you would say something. I think that key is going to be pointing out the pluses and minuses, because you're going to have some new breweries that are going to come online that are probably not going to hit the mark right out of the gate, maybe not invest in quality, but remember too that they're your neighbors. And, you know, think about it from another perspective. I see a lot of online hate, and I've seen it not necessarily directed at Rivertown, just in general, you know, for some startup breweries or this, that, and the other, but just remember that they are a business and help them. So by not saying anything, you're not being helpful. But by saying it in a negative way, I think that's partially why a lot of times I stay off social media for that reason. When I say stay off of it, I definitely follow it. I just don't respond to it so much because I like positivity, and I react when I see someone being positive to someone, and I've seen constructive criticism being given. There's some people out there that are wonderful at it, and then there's some people out there that are awful at it. And I think if we're going to continue to grow craft beer in Cincinnati, we're going to need both the consumer and we're going to need the breweries, but we're going to need them to react together in a positive light to help push it forward in a way that's going to impact the community in a good way. The past couple of years, I went to some of the Brewers Association conventions and listening to those guys talk about quality issues across the United States and different breweries they were talking to. And you know, their lines were, you know, hey, we've got this by the balls, don't fuck it up, is exactly how they worded it. And you know, instead, I think what they should have done was you know, find a way to reach out to your community and bring them in as part of it. And I think that's one of the things we've always been good about is, you know, being responsive, being reactive, but being proactive, you know, in what we were planning to do, and not necessarily confronting people. You know, because everyone makes mistakes. I don't care what brewery you talk to, whether it be in Cincinnati, Cleveland, wherever. None of us are above them. Even the biggest guys make mistakes. So, I think that would be my word of advice to people in this city, and how we can make this city grow, and how we can see so many different regional breweries and national breweries, is by being helpful for our community, being supportive. You know.